welcome to another episode of the Going Over podcast. Happy freaking New Year, because it is January 1st, and this will air tomorrow. I am your neighborhood-friendly coach, trainer, promoter, Zack Primetime Reeb, joined alongside my podcast partner as we start another year, the 7-foot wrecking ball, Paul Isadora. And Paul, the picture's not up. Everything's not set up. It's been very busy. You've been very busy. When we recorded last, it feels like it's been so long.
Oh yeah, man. It's been quite some time. I was expecting to jump on here. I thought you'd have a new backdrop. Thought you'd have some new headphones. I thought you'd have a mixer board. I thought everything was going to be just scratching away. I thought we'd have sound effects. I thought we'd have the voice bubbles above our heads. There you go. I thought we'd have all of that stuff. Yeah. So I thought we'd have some of that, the animation, all that stuff. I thought that stuff was going to happen, but I guess it's going to be for another day. But I know that you're gearing up, man, for not only a big weekend, but you got your training today on New Year's Day. You got prospects tomorrow on Friday. You got Red Bluff on Saturday. Training again on Sunday. Man, it's gonna be a whirlwind. And like you said, man, if you're not ready for this, man, it's you don't want to be a pro wrestler.
If you don't run into day 5 on Monday, you're not ready for 2026. I'm ready for 2026. Yeah, I didn't get everything set up. That's why I say coach, trainer, and promoter, 44-year-old professional wrestler. Nowhere in that statement did I say fucking soundboard, mixer tech, graphic designer, or video editing wizard. I never said any of those things. That's why you send me the StreamYard link. But I'm looking this year to step up a little bit. I got all these gadgets sitting in front of me. So I'm going to learn here. I'm going to devote, after this weekend, coming into the week, I'm going to devote some time to this. I hate watching YouTube videos. I hate people telling me how to do something. I just got to mix around and I guess make some mistakes myself. And speaking of mistakes, I thought it'd be a great thing to talk about the new year. And, I was watching the clips from AEW at World's End, and I see Jon Moxley hit a Cobra Clutch, German suplex, and just stack up high from about 7-8 feet on the neck. Kyle Fletcher, or as Jim Cornette likes to say, Kyle Felcher. And if you don't know what a Felcher is, then just go to Google and type in, what is the sexual reference of a Felcher? I will not give that away on the show just yet. But
it's funny because just the other day I was saying the Dumb and Dumber line about Freda Felcher. Talking about Freda Felcher from Cranston?
Yeah, the Felcher.
Oh, the Felcher.
I remember when Mike French first started and he wanted to be the clown character, and I said, how about be Felcher the Clown? And he almost went and got gear made and merchandise, and I didn't realize he didn't know what a Felcher was. So I actually was like, hey bro, don't do that. Look it up, So you out there in podcast, you out there in listener land, go ahead and look up. If you don't know what it is, if you don't know, hopefully next episode you will know what a Felcher is. Maybe you can become a big time.
That could have been the all-time best rib ever.
Well, it was a good one.
You give a guy a character, he does zero research on it, just gets the gear and puts it together, and that would be like many of the characters that you've talked about in the past that they don't realize that their character is a certain way and they're just oblivious, and and their tag team partner is it's very Billy and Chuck, so just like those guys were oblivious.
Oh, that's a good little felch. But speaking of Kyle Felcher, speaking of the World's End, I saw some other things. I saw Statlander hit a 180, maybe turned the wrong way. I think probably she should have gone this way, but a 180 Fisherman's Buster, which was seconds away from Jamie Hayter maybe taking paralysis. We've seen Stone Cold Steve Austin on an inverted tombstone pile driver. We've seen a lot of injuries over the year. We saw Big E, a slip on the outside, and we know this is dangerous. We say this is dangerous all the time, but I saw something from Arn Anderson, and he was talking about, take it easy, guys, take it easy. And then Steven Regal lit the internet world on fire. I even saw Brian Cage post when he landed on his neck and talk about you don't have to take risky moves coming from the man, Mr. GSI, get your shit in. And I saw some other thing, Piper Niven and a few other people. I even saw Kyle Felcher on programming showing the interviewers and the guests how he protects their neck. And I get we're trying to protect the neck, but guys, bottom line, accidents happen, right? I've had some accidents happen. I watched Scoot Robertson kick a kid named Ernesto Roas after a snapmare in the low of the back and paralyzed him. I've flipped over the top rope and shattered my tailbone. I took a errant high school boy bump from a choke slam from you that sent me to the pisser at the Hayward off of Winton Chili's, face first down into the toilet shitter, the porcelain god. And luckily, Venice DeMarco found me down there pissing all over myself. So we get that it's dangerous, right? We understand that. We understand this is dangerous, but taking these unnecessary risks, right? Are they worth it? Because when I look back on my career, all these unnecessary risks that I changed, I didn't make that. I'm not paying any bills right now off of those unnecessary risks, man. I don't feel they're worth it. We're in a business. It's a cosmetic business. We're in a business of entertainment. It's called sports entertainment. And we are here to develop a character. We are here to entertain the audience, tell stories. And when it's time to do that, dangerous stuff, let's do this dangerous. Is it really ever worth it, Paul, is the question. Is it really ever worth it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's ever really worth it. You have to think about yourself and maybe with your opponent, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What is the visual that we're trying to get across? And what are the risks associated with that visual that we're trying to accomplish? I mean, I think, in some sense, you have people that are, you're taking some risks, but you're also under contract with, my understanding is you're going to continue to be under contract. These companies are going to pay for you to get, your hospital bills and things like that. So I don't know if these guys are feeling like they've got some sort of safety net where they can take some of these big risks with the understanding that, if I get hurt, I'll still be under contract and the company that I'm working for will pay my medical bills. But, when you think about the long-term ramifications to what's going on, it is, it's your health, right? You're talking about, taking some sort of risk of getting injured to elevate your performance or some sort of visual piece of that performance, in exchange for potentially getting hurt and not being able to do this as a living anymore. Because eventually, if you can't wrestle anymore, this company is no longer going to keep you under contract. They might keep you under contract with the understanding that they're going to, whatever your injury is going to get fixed and you're going to get back to work. But if the case is you're not going to get back to work, they might do you a solid and keep you under contract for a small amount of time and pay for your medical bills or whatever. But after that, man, it's on you. So, yeah. So I don't know, man. I think about, for me, though, I feel like the worst time that I got hurt was in a training session, and somebody gave me a second rope leg drop and landed on my head. It's like definitely got concussed and was didn't pass out on the toilet or anything like that, but definitely my bell was rung for a substantial amount of time, where I'm just like, not knowing what's going on, dizzy, wandering around and not knowing where you are, things like that. So, but I don't think I've ever put myself in that, the situation to, I think about all the risks that I've seen being taken, just in Northern California wrestling, the jumping off the basketball hoops and big table bumps and, so many matches, years ago, maybe would have involved a clay pot spot, people getting, the clay pot getting busted or getting a concussion or getting knocked out or whatever the things are. And, it's at some point we just have to go, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And, what are the positives versus the negatives of trying to accomplish whatever the goal is that we're looking to get visually?
Well, I get it. Young, you feel invincible, and you go out there where our adrenaline's going, so we think we're going to be okay. I mean, we land on our back, whether we tuck our chins or not properly, palms flat. We land like this 1,000 times, and then 1,001, 1,002, that one time we hit, everything it gives. And they say, what's your bump card at, right? We always hear that. What's my bump card at? What's my bump card? I'll tell you right now, my high school boy bump card, it's full. My snap schoolboy bump fucking card got a lot in the tank left on that. I feel if I used it sparingly. Handspring bump, Beal bump, all those things. I got a few face bumps left in me. But high school boy bumps, that bump card seems just to me just going up and landing and that impact from so high up. And we only have, these things tear us apart. So when those guys are landing on their head and they're like, I'm fine. Steve Regal said, hey, I've been trained properly, probably trained harder and been trained better than a lot of these guys nowadays. And I was trained to protect myself on these bumps. And I still can't. And it's one thing I always think about when I'm laying in bed is I'll be laying in bed and I'll be watching TV comfortable and on my side position over here. And I'll have to do this number or this number and I'll feel a pop. And I got an extra 10 minutes left in me before I got to take another pop. You know what I mean? And I can only imagine what would have happened, because early on in my career, when I started going to Japan and then I went to Portugal and I was working just every single night, I started to realize, like, at the style I was wrestling, how many frog splashes could I miss on a 19-day tour before, and then my elbows, because I didn't have the elbow pads, started to get the bursitis or whatever it is, swell, where the water was filling up into the elbows. And we get that on our knee, or we lose all that cartilage on our knee. And Zach Reeb, who used to be able to do the most amazing leapfrogs and 180 leapfrogs and spring up to the top rope, now looks at himself at 44 and goes, I'm not backflipping and grabbing my leg and yet I'm not doing headstand moonsaults anymore. I'm not doing lion salts anymore. My frog splash is not what it used to be. And I'm not afraid to admit that. And that's because this stuff, we don't get to do it forever, right? We don't get to do it forever. And these young guys, the bumps on the apron, the bumps on the floor. And I got into this conversation this weekend and it got really hectic. I was talking to a new student and I said, why was Jake the Snake Roberts DDT so effective, right? So why was it so effective? And nobody had the answer for it. They were like, because they protected the business better. They drove him on his face. And it's like, all those answers could be right, but the real reason is he's 6 feet 7 inches tall. And when he would grab Steamboat in a guillotine with that left arm, Steamboat would come up on his tippy toes and he would drive him almost 7 feet straight down onto his face and knock him unconscious. And it's not the fact. We talked about it the last episode, I believe. Yeah, you could go down to your knees or sit out with a chokeslam. You're athletic enough to do it, but like, what's the logic of a finishing move? It's not, protect it, sell it right. But I mean, Jake was driving you from 6'7" down. We talked about why he didn't work Hogan. He didn't want Hogan just to kick out of that move and start hulking up. And we mentioned another episode ago, which is crazy. You were asking me if there was any moment that I thought the match was over. And when was that first moment for me? And I said, fuck, when Jake DDT'd The Undertaker at WrestleMania 8. And Taker says Jake did more for him in the wrestling business than anybody else coming up, because nobody ever got up from that thing until Taker did at WrestleMania 8. So we talk about that all the time. I want you as a very athletic 7-foot man who goes over the top rope backwards, takes superplexes, all these athletic things that you do. Tell me what you think about these risks in these matchups, and tell me what you think as far as like protecting a finishing move nowadays with all this wrestling going on and everybody thinking everybody's doing DDTs because they're all under 6 foot fucking tall. You know what I mean? Why not? Who gives a fuck at this point?
Right. And I think a lot of this stuff comes from you're wanting, we've talked about this 100 times already, the Mankind off the Hell in a Cell bump, right? A lot of it is you want that buzz to be created, right? So maybe you're hitting this Cobra Clutch German suplex as a, it's going to be a holy shit moment, right? And it's not the holy shit moment that we like, that we talk about, that we enjoy, where it's like amazing storytelling, like, man, I'm really, really into the storytelling of this match. And, I am super entertained. I am hanging on my seat in anticipation. I can't wait to see what happens next. We're not getting that type of holy shit moment. We're getting the holy shit moment that we despise, where you're going, holy shit, man, that guy almost died right there, right? That guy could have died right there if that went just awry a little bit more or whatever. So I think that's what it is, that we have people that are chasing that holy shit moment because they think it's interchangeable. They think a holy shit moment is a holy shit moment because the crowd was chanting holy shit. But the way that you and I have talked about it in the past is there are two completely different types of moments like that. One with the audience very entertained into what's going on throughout the contest and just thoroughly engaged in what's going on. And then the other one is the dangerous, the guy almost died, I can't believe the guy's getting up type of thing. And that leads to, like we talked about, it's like, not only did that happen that you go, wow, that's a near-death experience right there, but then they get up and wrestle several minutes afterwards. So that's just, you'd call it the icing on the cake, but it's like, in the absolutely worst way, right? This isn't something that you're going to get to brag about. This is going to be something like, can you believe they wrestled 10 minutes after this, potential finisher, right? And that kind of just leads right into how do you get that experience nowadays? How do you establish a finisher that every time it happens, the fans just automatically know the other guy is not getting up? And we've talked about that in the past as well, how those situations used to be saved for a pay-per-view, right? A big time, you built a big story into a big money drawing event, and that's where you could make those type of things happen, right? You could get the fans to believe, like, if this guy hits this move, the contest is over. But that's the opportunity to kind of swerve the fans a little bit, right? But we've got into that mindset where now every match you're going to kick out of someone's finish, right? There is no protecting finishes anymore, except at very rare circumstances, right? Very rarely do you see something that's the finish of the match every single time you see it happen, So, and I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but, I'm thinking about, like, back in the day where it was King Kong Bundy hits an avalanche splash, it's over with, right? Hogan drops the leg, it's over with. All these different things, Jake the Snake, you had so many of those situations where a guy would hit a move and you just knew the match was over, right? The other guy there's no possible way for this guy to kick out of that. So, and I don't know if there's a way for us to get back to establishing a finisher that nobody kicks out of. It's like, it's got to be somebody special. It's got to be someone that will be willing to stand up and go, hey, listen, this is how it's going to go down. I'm protecting this move. Nobody's kicking out of it, right? We're not going to get ourselves in a situation where someone is going to kick out of it. It's like, if I'm not winning the match, then I'm not hitting this move. And it's like, short and sweet, to the point, no questions asked. Like, that's the way it's going to be. And, having someone, I don't even know if it's brave enough to do it, but it's like, just, willing to stand your ground enough to go, hey, this is how it's going to be, right? I think about, like, MJF with interviews, and people are like, oh, this guy's such an asshole, such a dick, and blah, blah, blah. Like, doesn't he know that this is a work? And it's like, yeah, but this guy is establishing himself as a heel character, right? So it's like, what would a heel character do in every facet of their life? They would act exactly the same all the time. It's not going to be, I'm a bad, despicable human being just on camera, right? I'm that every time I go to an autograph signing, every time I'm at an event, in the airport. Like, you think about how crazy it was for people to see, the Undertaker kind of behind the scenes and, pulling the curtain back and things like that. It's like, you knew of this character as one way for so many years that all of a sudden now you're like, this guy's an actual human being. This guy's a real person. He's just like you and me, and all of these things. And it's just you can't fathom it, right? You're so hooked into the character that you can't get away from it. So that's what we need, man. We need those people that are willing to, put everything into protecting a finish. And it's like, hey, listen, I'm not giving you this move if there's going to be a kick out, right? If we can't figure it out, then I'm just not doing that move.
Yeah, where you said, where does it start, right? Where does this start? How do we just out of nowhere start to do this again? And it starts with, we run our own wrestling companies. So a lot of times it's outside bookings. You're bringing somebody in from the outside and they want to do this move. And the idea of going around the locker room, we talked about it before. Hey, here's arsonist asking anybody if they're doing a low blow or using a chair or the old ref bump. You know, sometimes I've seen on shows there's 2 or 3 matches that have a ref bump or the ref getting used like that in a match because nobody went around and asked these questions. And I was talking to Sergio yesterday, and we were talking about like, well, what should your finishing move be? You know, and he said, well, whatever it is, I want it to be something that's off limits for everybody. Like, no matter what it is, off limits. And that seems like such an extraordinary thing. Like, that's like, oh man, nobody else can do this move. And I always talked about back in the day, you know, you talked about with the chokeslam, I talked about with the super kick. Oh, can we do the super kick tonight? And so, what are you beating the guy with it? No, okay, I am. Go ahead, use it since you're not beating him with it. But it really is like, when are we going to get back to the point? And you can in your own company, because you can create the ground level and the foundation of how you want your company to be, and you can stick to it. And I hear Ugly say all the time, he's like, I need to get some new students. I just heard him say I need to get some new students, but I'm not going to change the way I train. I'm not going to change this. So guys are going to go other places. And one thing that I've noticed about my guys and the guys that work for me is they have an understanding of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do. So there has to be a vision. And there has to be a vision with this character you have too. It's not what I want. You know, if you ask me what I want, if you don't have any idea of what you want to do, hell, I'll come up with what I want to do, what I think would be cool. And then maybe you like it, maybe you don't, maybe you try to play it. But, you know, I had a student recently who just sent me everything. And then I had this amazing conversation, and that's where the Jake Roberts conversation came in, because I was like, dude, you're 6'7" and kind of thin and lanky. I'm like, you should watch Jake. You know, like this is something that people have said for years. Watch Piper's promos, watch Brett's matches. You know, everybody always says they watch these guys, but nobody really watches these guys because they start to watch them and then they get bored. They get bored because they're like, well, these guys are doing this now. And I've always been under the idea like, okay, everybody's doing this and this is what everybody's watching. I'll watch it, but I don't want to do what everybody else is doing, because then you don't set yourself apart from everybody else. Everybody wants to do this run off the rope, catch him with the forearm. Now I run off the rope, catch you with the forearm. Or we're going to do the cool, the international spot. You know what I mean? AJ Styles spot. Well, you're not ever going to do it as good as AJ Styles. So because AJ does it and it looks good and you can get through it, you know what I mean? Like, do you just want to get through this? You're okay with just getting through it? You know what I mean? Like, no, we have to sit here and go, all right, man, what is going to separate us from everybody else? How can I do something that's different? And if you don't have an idea of a character, if you don't have an idea of his motives and where he's going and how he talks and how he walks, like, that's the biggest thing. How does this guy walk? I remember back in the day, who was the guy who did the music for WWE? Was it
Johnston?
Joel Johnston was his name, maybe? Or
it was Jim, but who knows?
Jim Johnston.
There you go.
And I was watching, was it Beyond the Mat? And like, it's these little details we miss that we never pick up. And he was talking about making the music for everybody, right? And he was talking about making Vader's music, like dun 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 dun. And he's like, because is how Vader moves. So it's easy for me, like Phil. I hate to say it, and Phil's probably gonna pull his old wiener out and start beating it across the screen because I'm saying this, but what? Dun, 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 Phil. And it was like, we created the one name, the character. We created everything about this guy's music and everything he did off of the way that he moved. And then all of a sudden you give him an opportunity out there and he does nothing. You give him a video, you give him a name, you spend the time. Doc spends time in production, graphically, everything. Cordero, the old ring announcer, he actually makes the song. We're going. You have to figure out, how does this person move? How is this character going to walk? How is he going to talk? How would he react in this situation? Does he really believe this? This is why I'm against this this person and that person. What are my motives? Like, you're 7 foot tall. I mean, unless we're playing a character, what if you were a 7 foot Richard Simmons workout guy? You know what I mean? What would you do as a 7 foot inspirational? Like, come on, ladies, let's get working out today. Or what if you were a 7 foot baseball player named MVP? Or Abe Knuckleball, Paul Knuckleball Schwartz, or like, my God, he's the largest roster filled catcher in the game. He's a 7 foot catcher. That's got to be bad on his knees. You know what I mean? Legs spread wide. But I mean, that's the thing. I say this and it seems like a joke, but it's like, if they paid you to be a 7 foot baseball catcher, or I'm a 7 foot first baseman. You know what I mean? Like, how would you play the character? What would your music be like? How would you do this? And we don't get that nowadays. And that just ties right into the finisher, because everyone's like, well, I have storylines. No, you don't have storylines. We mentioned, a paragraph, an angle, a paragraph, a short story. How are you going to tell the story if you can't even tell us who your fucking character is? You know what I mean? If you can't even establish, and a character isn't like our buddy over here who goes, oh, I want this guy to be a fucking ICE agent, or I want this guy to be a fucking swim with the fishes guy. No, that's a character you're just trying to put on the guy because he kind of looks like that. I need to know depth, man. I started watching this Stranger Things because everybody's talking about it. And for the first 2 seasons, I was completely fucking lost. And I'm going to tell you why I was lost. I figured it out by season 3, and now I'm on season 4. I figured out why I was lost. Because the episodes weren't just 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes. They were an hour and 15 minutes each one. And as I'm watching this, it's something for the first 2 seasons that I really have to watch without taking my eyes off it to understand these characters. I got caught in this modern, fast-paced world of attention spans. And then I started watching on season 3 because they were developing a little bit. And I was like, what? Why is this happening? And then they start, and as I would ask the question, the next scene would tell me the answer to the question I just asked. I'd be like, who the fuck is this person? And the next scene's like, that's my mom. Hello, mom. And I'd be like, oh, shit. They're telling me now. And I can tell they ran into that problem on that series where maybe the first couple seasons, people really didn't catch on to what the fuck was going on. You got to catch our attention in our short attention spans, and you have to keep telling us a story that we can follow. That's it. Bar none.
It sounds so simplistic, but obviously so difficult for so many people to do. So it's definitely something that, it obviously all this stuff starts from, training to be a wrestler. And as much as you don't want someone to come into your wrestling in school and say, hey, this is what my character looks like. I already know what my finisher is, all this stuff. We look at these people and go, what a fucking mark, right? Oh, this guy's going to walk into the wrestling school. He already knows everything he's going to do with this character, but at the same time, you know, we encourage that, right? I think we as coaches, you start watching someone, you know, just like you said, man, creating the music, you start watching someone and you go, oh, you know what they look like is they look like this, right? And you start building a character based off of how they move, how they look, their you know, different mannerisms and things like that. So, you know, obviously, I started off with a convict character, right? And I had no idea why that was, but not only did that happen with, you know, my trainer suggested that, but I went to I feel like I was at OVW. Me and Corey Dayton were at OVW, and the guy was like, "You know what I think you should do?" He's like, "You're just tall, pasty white. Uh, you look like a convict, somebody that doesn't get outside very often." You know, like I could see telling the story of you're pasty white. You know, you don't you don't get a tan because you're never outside. You're locked up in a cell or something like that. So it's like I can start seeing different things just based off of the way somebody looks, the way someone moves, like some of their mannerisms, the way they talk, whatever. Right? You can start developing things off of that. You know, you think about when you know John Cena getting ready to get released, and then they find some that he can rap, right? So then they create a character based off of that version of him, right? It's not outlandish. It's something that he is actually doing that he enjoys and things like that. And it's so that's why we ask a lot of questions when people are training to be a pro wrestler, right? Not only are we looking for people who have skills in you know video editing, production, public speaking, all these different things, like you might find some sort of thing that somebody does or they used to do or something in life outside of pro wrestling that you can go, hey, you know, we can relate that. We can put that into your character. We can create something based off of that. So I think that's why it's very important to explore those things, whether it's you as a coach or, you know, you're getting into the wrestling business and you go, hey, what type of things can I incorporate into creating a character? What things do I do outside of this? What's important to me, right? So definitely some things to think about when you're creating a character.
What gets me, I was having a conversation with Sparky, and I said something to him that really, like, he was like, "Oh, I never thought about that." And it's so if somebody gets hurt or we have to replace somebody, someone gets sick, someone gets hurt, God forbid they die, whatever, and we're actually telling a story, if we're really telling stories. Now, if we're running a wrestling show and a guy can't make it or cancels or whatever, double books himself, and then we just replace a wrestler with another wrestler, whatever, who cares? You know, no depth, no nothing. We just replaced him. But if we're actually running detailed stories with continuous characters and somebody gets hurt or somebody can't make it or gets injured and we have to continue the story, it always gets better. It always gets better because the injury or that person not showing up creates new adversity and it creates new opportunity. Sometimes it's an opportunity it's not a good opportunity. You know what I mean? But I've always noticed that when Sparky was saying, you got a point, because guys get married to these stories and these ideas because if you're writing these things, like I said, I'm writing them down all the time. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'll write the same shit over and over every week and just come back in and look at it and stuff like that. And then it changes and it never happens, but it's always here, right? But a lot of times when something changes, when somebody gets hurt or they're not around for a couple shows, you have to pull that person out of your creative writing and you give somebody else an opportunity, which gives them a chance. And a lot of times it makes the story better just because they can be there. You know what I mean? Just because they're there. I mean, I got through all the promos last show. I think the only people we used in October, I remember you showing up outside of the company, was Boyce and Nathan Brick. And it was just so easy. Now I got 2 camera guys with the cameras ready to go, and I got a different photo guy back here ready to take photos. And now we're doing it. We were done by 4:30, 2 hours before the doors open. We didn't even have to have a booking meeting. Everything was ready. It was just like a relaxed, chill moment because we got it done. You get back here sometimes you get guys that, oh, you're running the promos. Okay, I'm running fucking Steven Spielberg's out here now. Spielberg's here trying to get a fucking goddamn Grammy award for a 30-second promo that this shithead's going to film that no one probably might remember. You know what I mean? And then you get the camera guy and you're like, hey, let's get some stock. I got to switch the cards out. Like, who gives a shit? Switch the fucking card out. That's your job. We're going to do all the photos, then we're going to do all the stock, and then we're going to do all the promos because I don't want to pull a card out, do this, and then put the card back in. Why not? I got in an argument with Shoop one time. He showed up at the show, and I said, hey, we're not ready for this promo yet, so get your gear on. Well, I'm in my dressed up gear, and I'm dressed nice. Who gives a shit? You're dressed nice and you're ready for that promo? Well, the camera guy's not ready for that one, so get your gear on. I don't want to put my gear on and then put this back. Okay, man. You know, what can I do now? What can I do with you at this point if you're not willing to go to work? And I put on my gear a lot of times and changed it back and forth. Sometimes I'll put on my gear, and then when the show starts, I'll put my regular clothes back on so I can go outside. And if a fan sees me, I'm not sitting outside smoking a cigarette or something in my spandex. Because that's what we do. Sometimes we got to do things that maybe we didn't want to do so we can get what needs to be done. And that becomes the problem in the business. And we started with protecting yourself. You know, we don't have to kill each other. Well, we don't have to kill each other. But that's a live and learn thing, man. Like, you can only land on the high of your neck so long before sleeping becomes uncomfortable. How do we protect the finishing move? Well, we tell the rest of our locker room to sell this, to sell it. Don't hit. Paul hit me with the chokeslam. I lost it right there. Your chokeslam no longer means anything because I made a joke out of it. Instead of going up and hitting, and that's it. I went up and went. Little shimmy and shake from it. No, man. Now I buried it. I've already buried you once. You know what I mean? I'm never gonna bury you again. We already buried you once, and then buried Bradley Rotten in the process. You know what I mean? We don't need to bury you guys again. We need to marry, not bury. You know, don't be a Barry. But I mean, that's it.
It's definitely a learning experience, man. We obviously, that's the thing that I feel like we harp on so much, is like the making mistakes portion of learning to be a pro wrestler is so important. You know, we obviously we would love to, just like parents try to do for their kids, right? Hey, I made that mistake when I was a kid. I'm giving you a heads up so you don't make that mistake yourself. But in so many situations, the only way that you're truly going to learn not to make a mistake is by making that mistake and realizing, well, shit, this is the consequences, or this is what happens when you make that mistake. And, you know, hopefully the mistakes that you're making are not the ones that are going to get you injured and things like that. But it's just, I guess it goes back to, we talk about being in the back and standing up for yourself. And we did a podcast specifically just about saying no, right? So, and I think that leads into kind of what we're talking about. It's somebody wanting you to give your finisher and someone kick out of it, and you just have to have the confidence in your character to say, hey, listen, I'm not comfortable with somebody kicking out of it. I'm establishing that this is my finish, and this, every time I use this move, the match is over. So trying to establish it storyline wise, so it's just nobody is gonna get up from this move, and if it ends up being like, I think about using the choke slam and ways to really get it over, by if you were in the match before intermission and you use the choke slam, and you go into intermission and the guy is still laying in the ring, right? Has to get carted off or whatever, like really establishing like, hey, this is devastating. We think about like back in the last year sometime where we had Travis Alexander with the knockout, the elbow thing, and ending the show like that with the other wrestler still laying in the ring and getting the fans out of the building and really telling that story like, hey, this dude got knocked out. We're going to have to get medical attention for this guy. And, and leading it into the next show where you're like, this guy can't compete because he's not cleared medically.
You know what I told him? Because he knocked the guy out at the Ugly Dojo show, and then he slapped him in the face. And then the ref was checking on him to make sure he was. I said, you should have knocked him out. You should have got up and walked away. And then while the ref was seeing if he was like shaking him to see if he was okay, you should have came back and said, let me help you, and slapped him across the face, and then turn around, and the slap across the face woke him back up. And then he like looked up while you were talking shit, and he hit you with the schoolboy roll up, 1, 2, 3, and rolled out of the ring. And because you got up off of him before the ref checked him to say, and then you slapped him and woke him up. And it's little things like that, right? It's the little, we always say it's the little things. But we talk about these mistakes, and I always go back to listening to you talk about parenting. And I was talking to my dad the other day, and I was like, it's got to be horrible being a parent. I'll tell you why. Because we don't want to listen to anybody, not even just as a grown adult. We don't want to listen to people. They're like, hey, man, don't go do those. Don't drink those drugs. Don't have sex with that girl. You're going to get an STD. And we're like, go fucking do it anyways. It burns when I pee. You know what I mean? So as a parent, it's got to be the worst thing in the world that you're actually telling this human being, no, don't do this because it's going to be a mistake for you. And then that person's going, I want to drink that alcohol. I want to go to this concert with my boyfriend. I want to drive. And you as a parent are telling somebody something that you know that they're not going to listen to you. And then because they don't listen to you, you go, you're in trouble. Go to your room. I'm taking your phone away. I'm taking your car away. And then you expect that human being to be like, oh, I love you so much, and not be mad at you. You know what I mean? Like parents, man, we're setting ourselves up for failure. That's why they say, don't be their friend, be their parent. Because at the end of the day, I guess they're going to respect you as they get older and make those mistakes. But that's just got to be hard, right? As a parent, you know that you're telling your daughters not to do something that they want to do, and then they do it and get in trouble, and then you have to punish them and watch them walk around the house and like an angry boss that you didn't show up for work. They're like, you're getting the silent treatment and dirty looks and eye rolls from me. How is that as a parent going into those type of situations?
Oh, it's difficult, man, for sure. It's, you think about all of those things, and all you're really trying to do at the end of the day is, I'm trying to protect you from yourself, and I think back of all the situations where, I was the kid and my parents were, they're trying to tell me not to do something, right? Very, obviously when you first get your when you first turn 21, right? You're invincible. You're drinking alcohol. You're thinking, oh well, I feel fine, right? You don't understand what alcohol does to your body and how it impairs your judgment and reaction time and all this different stuff. And and it's just one of those deals. Like sometimes, you go out and you get in trouble, right? Hopefully the police aren't involved, but it's just one of those situations where you're I know for sure, after the fact, talking to my dad and things like that, and getting in trouble, right? Drinking and driving, making bad choices, and then him going, hey, I didn't tell you this before, but now that something has happened to you, I'm going to give you a story, like, and tells you a story that you can relate to. And that he, I don't know, like I think about all the different things, like the things you think you're getting away with, right? Oh, my parents don't know. It's, I have a buddy that would be smoking cigarettes, right? And, oh, I'm going to spray hairspray on myself and my parents won't know anything. And this just kind of knowing after the fact, like, as an adult and being able to like, oh, that's somebody that smells like they've been smoking cigarettes. And just parents know they're giving you, they're giving you enough rope to hang yourself, basically, right? And so it's just one of those things where you're trying to protect them, but at the same time, it's very much like me as a kid having to make mistakes on my own to learn the lessons that are taught by making those mistakes. So, just I guess being mature enough to go, hey, you know what? I'm going to tell you about this mistake, but I also am not naive to the fact that you're probably going to have to make the mistake and learn from it to truly learn, right? So I don't know, man. I guess it's the same as coaching wrestling, right? You're trying to tell someone how to do something, how to not get hurt, or hey, we're learning how to fall because this might happen. I feel like I am over the top about training about real world situations, right? This is the reason that we're doing this. It's not just a drill that we're doing. This is how it relates to a pro wrestling match or a situation that you might be into. I constantly talk about, the roles and things that we do, kind of progressions that are intended to keep ourselves safe and get ourselves familiar with our own body mechanics and how we're going to fall, and just protecting ourselves from taking bad falls, and and that could relate back to the original subject where we were talking about taking some of these dangerous bumps, and maybe Kyle Fletcher said, hey, I'm willing to take that move because I think I can protect myself. And and you never know, man. I was thinking after we were talking about that, how disgusting the move that Ugly used to use, the internet mark. He would fold guys up, man. And I'm like, dude, how are these guys taking this move? And and obviously you come to find out that he's very selective about the guys he's going to give it to, guys that he can safely control and things like that. But you watch this move happen and you're just like, Jesus, man, he's killing these dudes. Like, this is so unsafe. Watching it from a fan's perspective. So I don't know, man, what if that's how this was for for Moxley and Kyle Fletcher, if it was hey, this is going to look disgusting, but it's going to be safe, or whatever. Obviously we watch it in slow motion and we look at it and go, oh, this guy fucking drove himself fucking high neck and shoulders onto the ground, and that can't feel good. But who knows, man?
Well, necks are not strong. They're just naturally not strong. That's why when they break, you're fucking done, you know? I wrestled Ugly one time at a show in Chico that Tom Bocci and Drake Nelson were doing it. And I liked the work we did. We had a we worked well together. But I did say I don't want to take that move. Like I made that abundantly clear at the start. Not saying that he, if anybody was going to do that move to me, I would have, Ugly's the guy that would probably pull that move off. But at that point in my career, with my tailbone and landing on my neck so many times, Rick tossing me in those Germans and the concussions, watching him do that to these guys, and a lot of those guys were like 140 to 160 pound, like pretty flexible, smaller guys. I just knew that there's that one wrist that I wouldn't get turned underneath enough, and something bad could have happened to me, and that's the thing. It's okay, guys. It's okay to say no. And I don't think John Moxley did that to Kyle Fletcher to hurt him. And I don't think, I don't believe those guys are trying to hurt each other over there. What I'm saying is, when you look at WWE, those guys are athletes coming out of college and stuff like this, right? Like these are super athletes they're bringing in, gymnast and soccer player. Like Jada Parker is a soccer player. Fucking Sol Rukin on there, they're gymnasts. Now, back in the day, WWE, when they had the NXT brand and stuff, they had the best athletic wrestlers, like independent wrestlers, guys that were really solid indie guys from around the world. Now AEW has all the top indie guys from literally all over the world. So when I sit here and say I'm not bad mouthing AEW because I don't think that they have the talent, I think they have the actual best independent wrestling talent that comes out of guys that go, I want to be wrestlers as kids and go around the world in wrestling. I'm saying they are not using they know what they're doing. I've watched Kenny Omega, right? I've watched him. He understands pro wrestling. I've seen all these guys on matches and clips doing in-ring psychology right. And then I see him out there, and it becomes this thing where there's all these fans. It's pay-per-view. It's television. These are the AEW fans are very rabid core of fans. And you start hearing people chanting very loud before you go out there on a big pay-per-view event. And I've done it on small events in front of nobody. You're going to go out there and you're going to take unnecessary risks that you don't need to take because you're trying to create a moment. That's what it is. You're trying to create a moment. We talk about it all the time. But I'm just saying, it's sometimes in creating that moment. Look at Big E. Big E was great in the ring. He just won his first WWE championship. And the one guy dropped him on his neck. And he's been doing, he broke his neck and he's been doing commentary ever since. We're never going to see Big E back in the ring. And that came when he won not the world championship, the WWE championship. The guy made it to the top, man. They put the belt on him. They put the main belt on him in the world. And he broke his neck. And he's a great analyst at the table, but we're never going to see him back in the ring wrestling again. So yeah, just take care of yourselves, guys. If you're out there, don't be afraid to say no and think, hey, you guys, like you guys got kids, you got jobs and kids, present day stuff, right? Hey, you have to go to are all going to have struggles, problems, financials, everything like that. And we're all going to have jobs we don't like. But we're going to be worse off in life if we can't take care of our families and we can't go to work the next day. And if we don't have our health, we have absolutely nothing.
That's exactly right, man. Obviously, at our level, that is of the utmost importance that we are healthy, we can go earn a living and put food on the table and pay your mortgage and all those things. So definitely things to think about. But hey, man, we're running out of time here. But for prime time, and for Paul Isadora. Subscribe, share, like, comment, all those things. Get the microphone working. That way we can for sure be going over.